We are back to the book. The Body Keeps the Score. Happy Super Bowl Sunday. Just kidding. Go Birds. But this book has a lot of talk of scientists and science experiments, but I'm really skipping through stuff and only reading the parts that stand out to me and I feel like would be more relevant to more people. So we are in the section about making sense of suffering. Semrad taught us that most human suffering is related to love and loss, and that the job of a therapist is to help people acknowledge, experience, and bear the reality of life, with all its pleasures and heartbreak. The greatest sources of our suffering are the lies we tell ourselves, he'd say, urging us to be honest with ourselves about every facet of our experience. He often said that people can never get better without knowing what they know and feeling what they feel. Now, on to inescapable shock. The mere opportunity to escape does not necessarily make traumatized animals or people take the road to freedom. Like Meyer and Seligman's dogs, which is an experiment where they shocked a bunch of dogs, many traumatized people simply give up. Rather than risk experimenting with new options, they stay stuck in the fear that they know. I was riveted by Meyer's account when they what they had done to these poor dogs was exactly what had happened to my traumatized human patients. They too had been exposed to somebody or something who had inflicted terrible harm on them, harm they had no way of escaping. I made a rapid mental review of the patients I had treated. Almost all had in some way been trapped or immobilized, unable to take action to stave off the inevitable. Their fight or flight response had been thwarted, and the result was either extreme agitation or collapse. Ideally, our stress hormones our stress hormone system should provide a lightning fast response to threat, but then quickly return us to equilibrium. In PTSD patients, however, the stress hormone system fails at this balancing act. Fight, flight, or freeze signals continue after the danger is over, and, as in the case of the dogs, do not return to normal. Instead, the continued secretion of stress hormones is expressed as agitation and panic, and in the long term, wreaks havoc with their health. Further animal studies involving mice, rats, cats, monkeys, and elephants brought more intriguing data. For example, when researchers played a loud intrusive sound, mice that had been raised in a warm nest with plenty of food scurried home immediately. But another group, raised in a noisy nest with scarce food supplies, also ran home, even after spending time in more pleasant surroundings. Scared animals return home regardless of whether home is safe or frightening. I thought about my patients with abusive families who kept going back to be hurt again. Are traumatized people condemned to seek refuge in what is familiar? If so, why? And is it possible to help them become attached to places and activities that are safe and pleasurable? Now, this section is about being addicted to trauma, the pain of pleasure and the pleasure of pain. Freud had a term for such traumatic reenactments. The reenactments they're referring to is a prostitute that kept returning to their pimp. It is the compulsion to repeat. He and many of his followers believed that reenactments were an unconscious attempt to get control over a painful situation and that they eventually could lead to mastery and resolution. There is no evidence for that theory. Repetition leads only to further pain and self-hatred. In fact, even reliving the trauma repeatedly in therapy may reinforce preoccupation and fixation. At this point, just as with drug addiction, we start to crave the activity and experience withdrawal when it's not available. In the long run, people become more preoccupied with the pain of withdrawal than the activity itself. This theory could explain why some people hire someone to beat them up or burn themselves with cigarettes, or why they are only attracted to people who hurt them. Fear and aversion, in some perverse way, can be transformed into pleasure. We concluded that Beecher's speculation that strong emotions can block pain was the result of the release of morphine-like substance manufactured in the brain. This suggested that for many traumatized people, re-exposure to stress might provide a similar relief from anxiety. It was an interesting experiment, but it did not fully explain why Julia kept going back to her violent pimp. But that's all for today. I'm going to go eat breakfast. I hope you have a good day. Bye.